let's take a look at a really powerful tool called Metasploit. Now, keep in mind when you take the CEH exam, you don't need to know the particulars of any one tool. You need to know what they do, you need to know the use case, you don't need to know the syntax exactly, with the exception of probably Nmap and Netcat because they're the old venerable tools. But Metasploit, if you're doing real pen testing, is really powerful. It has a number of versions. We're going to be using the framework version, the free version that comes with Kali. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch it by running a command called msf console. We're going to look at the status of the database. We're going to do an Nmap scan of our subnet, but we're going to capture everything in the database, which is why it says db_nmap, not simply nmap. We'll look at the services we've discovered. Then we'll look for some Metasploit specific modules. We'll search for modules that are port scanners. We'll do a SYN scan. We'll set a few options. We'll set some ports and we'll scan one of our machines because Metasploit is nowhere near as fast as Nmap. So anyway, here we are on Kali, and just to see all of the machines so we can white box this, I have, when you look down here, I've got a lot of the machines running. About the only one I don't have running is Windows 10. This may be too many for you. If you don't have enough RAM and enough horsepower to run all of these, then just launch Kali, because you'll need it, and also launch Metasploitable. You'll want that one as well. And if you want, you can launch one of the windows, like Server 2016. So anyway, taking a look at all of these, we're just going to make sure that we have the IP addresses. When we look in Metasploitable, we did not configure it with a hard-coded IP when you set up the lab. So let me just type, if you need to log into Metasploitable, what we can do is we can just log out. I just typed exit. When you launch Metasploitable, by the way, there's no mouse in Metasploitable. You can release your mouse by pressing Control-Alt. Control-Alt releases your mouse in VMware, either VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Player. Anyway, the Metasploitable module or login you can see as msfadmin with the password of msfadmin. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to type msfadmin, enter, and then the password is msfadmin. And of course you don't see it. In Linux they don't repeat the password, on the console like that. So you type not ipconfig, you type ifconfig to find out your IP address. And let me Control-Alt to free my mouse so I have a pointer. It's 192.168.75.131. You can see it's Ethernet 0, and the iNet address, not the iNet 6 address, which is of course IPv6, but the iNet address, which is IPv4. This one is for the loopback, which as you can see is 127.0.0.1. Makes sense. So let's keep this one in mind. 192.168.75.131 is the address for Metasploitable. And if we wanted to, we could go take a look at the address of Ubuntu. We can log in as Ubuntu with the password of Toor, T-O-O-R. And in this one, it is 75.152 because we did not hard-code Ubuntu either. The windows are hard-coded, though. And then when we go to Kali, when we come to Kali and open up a terminal, and let me just zoom in. If I ifconfig in Kali, because all the Linux you ifconfig, ifconfig. This one's 154. So 153, we're going to zoom in on that one a little bit later. You can see I've got it here. Like I said, the Nmap and just the DB in front just simply means capture in the Metasploit database. It'll be very fast, whereas the Metasploit module, which is a different tool, but it does port scanning, will be really, really slow. So I'm going to narrow that one. So with this background here, you can launch Metasploit two ways. Right now, I just have a terminal, just a command prompt. It is not Metasploit. You can either type msf console to launch it, or you can come over here on the favorites, the launcher, and you can click the little blue shield with the M. Either one. They both do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to press enter. Now, it'll take a moment for the database to initialize and to fire up and for it to load all of its little modules and all that stuff. Metasploit tools are pretty much written in Ruby. And although there were earlier versions where scripts were written in Python, but it's pretty much written in Ruby these days. So we can see that the Metasploit framework has 1,800 plus exploits, 539 payloads. Exploit is kind of like when you kick in the door. Payload is when you throw in the grenade. And we can see that there's a link if we wanted to get the professional trial version, which is basically a GUI. It has nice reporting and sort of a nice phishing campaign tool and a few other little things. But most people do the hardcore stuff using the framework. So we've launched it. Now let's just look at the database. Let's type db_status. Press enter. We can see that Metasploit uses a SQL database. It uses PostgreSQL, which is the SQL server in this case, and the name of the database is simply MSF. And if you get really proficient in Metasploit, you can create different databases, different workspaces, just the way you would in ReconNG, but that's beyond the scope of this class. So now that we know the status, by the way, if it shows not connected, just it's because probably you don't have a lot of resources on your machine and it had trouble starting up. What you can do is you can close the window and reopen it, and just wait a moment, or even reboot your Kali machine, not your whole host machine. So let's do a db_nmap. Now, if we were not capturing in the database, we would just say nmap and then a target subnet /24. You can be a lot more specific. We will study nmap in much greater detail a little later. But we're going to actually capture the results in the database. So we're going to say db_nmap, and we're going to scan the whole subnet, 192.168.75.0/24. You could be very specific. You could just say db_nmap 192.168.75.133, and that's it. But we're going to do the whole subnet. So we're going to press enter. Nmap is really fast compared to other types of scanners. Even still, it will scan the whole subnet for the 1,000 most popular ports. So I'm going to pause this video and, well, no time. Okay, I didn't need to. It's done. So it's done the whole subnet for the 1,000 most popular ports per machine. Let's scroll back. Take a look here. So we can see that the first thing it found was 192.168.75.1, which is used by my host. And we can see that it has some open ports here. So my host has some open ports. Okay, so we can go down a little farther, and here's it found 192.168.75.2. VMware, be it workstation or player, tends to use .2 as the default gateway. And all of these are closed, meaning it's just not open for business on anything, with one exception, TCP 53. Okay, then we have 75.8, which is Windows 8, and we can see that it says all 1,000 scan ports are filtered, meaning filtered means no response of any kind came back. That's suspicious. It means there's a firewall, because you're either going to get some kind of acknowledgement, or you're going to get a reset, like if you scan a port that like 35 that nobody uses, the machine will send back a reset. The fact that we got nothing means that there was a firewall. Okay, so then we see 75.12, which is Windows 2012, and it shows there were 995 ports filtered, but some ports are open on Server 2012. By the way, I hope you see that each one we can see the MAC addresses too. And then here's Server 2016. A bunch of filtered ports, meaning firewall. However, the firewall is open for some ports. And then here's 131, and that is Metasploitable, and you can see Metasploitable has loads of open ports, loads of open services, loads and loads, and it looks like we have closed ports. That's not filtered. Filtered means there's a firewall not allowing the thing to respond at all. Closed means we tried a port and it sent back a reset, TCP reset, saying I'm not open for business on that port. So we can deduce that this IP address is not firewalled at all. Going down a little farther, here is 152. and that is I think Kali, and all the ports are closed. Kali doesn't have a firewall running, but it doesn't have any services running either. Kali is meant to be an attack machine, not a server. So it's got no ports open for business. And then here's 254, which is something that VMware also uses, and it's all filtered, so there's no response. So anyway, let's see, we've also got, 154 here, all ports closed. So, all right, that is our reply. Now, if we go and we look at the services, if we do a db_services, let's see what was stored in the database in terms of all the services found. So I've got to click in here first. db_services. Press enter. These are all the services that were discovered during that scan. And we can see some of the services are provided by this IP, one of them by this IP, some of them by this, some by this, and huge loads of them by Metasploitable 131. And we can even see that it tried to identify it. It says, oh, this version of SMB is Samba 3.0, a Debian version. So that is using Nmap, but capturing it in the database. Now, we can also use the Metasploitable module. We can look for port scanners in the module. We're going to search for the word port scan to see what modules exist. So see search port scan. Press enter. And we're going to see a bunch of modules. Let me just move this over here so we can just kind of take a look. Just expand this a little bit here. Or at least try to. Okay, so what I did is I went in and in Task Manager, I had to hit Control-Alt-Delete. I actually killed VMware Player. The VM kept running. And so when I relaunched it, I went straight back into it, but the player itself seems to have crashed. Okay, we are good to continue. So what we're going to do is we are going to use this module, the auxiliary scanner, port scan, SYN scan, and we're going to, because it's way slower than Nmap, we are going to just scan only Metasploitable. And when you look here, you can see I still have Metasploitable running. And so we're going to, let me Control-Alt, release my mouse. We're going to just scan 131. And we're going to be restrictive on how many ports. So I am going to copy this and right-click. So highlight, right-click, copy. And I'm going to say use. Unlike Recon NG, we don't say load, we say use. You right-click and you paste. And press enter. And now there are some options. Show options. Press enter. I did a show options. So you can set things like delay and variable delay and pick an interface. The things that are important to us is how many ports are we going to scan? If we scan the 10,000 most popular ports, it will take forever. Certainly with a machine like this. So we're going to whittle this way down, and we're only going to put in the remote hosts, meaning the targets, the target address range, we're only going to scan one rhost. And we're going to set the ports to be much fewer than this. So let's set ports from 21 to 445, just that. Those will be common. So you can see, I press enter, you can see I've got them. Let's set our hosts, that's for remote hosts, even though it's in plural, we're only going to do one. 192.168.75.131, that was Metasploitable, right? Double check. Yeah, Metasploitable is 131, yes. And we just want this one. Press enter. Let's show options. Press enter, and so we can see that we're only scanning these ports on this one machine. So even still, it's going to take a while. Let's run and press enter. And it's going to take a little bit. And when it is done, I'm going to come back and we're going to take a look at what we've got. So let's pause and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's done. So we scanned from ports 21 to 445, and we can see that these were discovered on Metasploitable. Now we know from the DB Nmap scan that there were loads more. However, we stopped the port scan at 4:45. There are more here, but it would have just taken too long. So that is a quick look at Metasploit, and we'll be looking at it a little bit more down the road.